야, 나들이 betuzi chabajenjala enda namji chajin lotajagi mentungju chiageta te 이게 가져 안 돼.
So for the benefit of all sentient beings in general, and particularly for the human beings on this earth who are disturbed by our attachment and anger, though we do not want suffering but want happiness, because we are overpowered by these negative emotions, we run after the causes of suffering, these negative emotions and so forth. So this cause of suffering is not without, but within ourselves. So the Buddha said, do not commit any evil deeds, cultivate the wealth of virtue. So virtue or wholesome deeds here. Of course, we can talk about physical and verbal actions which are virtuous, but mainly whether an action is virtuous or wholesome or unwholesome is dependent on one's should be delineated on the basis of the result that they bring about. So those the actions which bring about happiness for oneself and others are virtuous, and those actions which bring about suffering for others are non-virtuous or unwholesome. So we have this mind, which in turn means that we have a feeling or sensation. And therefore, with this feeling or that we have, the experience that we undergo, we want happiness and not suffering. The cause of suffering are our attachment, desires to attachment, and anger or hatred. But we actually indulge in these negative emotions. If we truly pray for all sentient beings to have happiness and to be free from suffering, if we really mean this, then we need to be able to introduce people and beings to this mind, that this unruly, undisciplined mind brings about unhappiness, suffering, but the disciplined mind brings about happiness. And so these happiness and unhappiness are the results of our disciplined or undisciplined mind. Shantideva says, though they do not want suffering, they run after the causes of suffering. Although they want happiness, they destroy the causes of happiness as if destroying their enemies. And so, in this world, we need to see the shortcomings of the negative, destructive emotions of attachment, hatred, and anger, and so forth, and try to overcome suffering. Although for thousands of years we have been praying for happiness, well-being, and so forth, but our suffering has not decreased, and therefore what we need to do is deal with our negative emotions, decrease negative emotions, and in order to have happiness. So the purpose of gathering here today is mainly for disciplining and controlling our mind, gaining control over our mind. So generally speaking, without touching religion, if we talk in terms of secular ethics, what we need to do is to have secular ethics or morality amongst people, even those non-believers. We need to spread the practice of cultivation of compassion. So secular ethics is something that has been practiced by Indians for thousands of years. And so in India, these are Indian traditions, non-violence or ahimsa, and so we cannot talk about violence with regard to the external objects as such, but if we need to understand non-violence in terms of our mental attitude, so in order not to cause violence, indulge in violence and cause harm to others, we need compassion within ourselves. And so we need to express that compassion in our action of body and speech. And then there will be peace and compassion. So we talk about peace in the world, but peace has to come from practice of compassion. In order to spread this compassion, we have different philosophical ideas and concepts in the world. Over 3,000 years ago in India, there had been philosophical schools, schools of thought, which talk about life after life. Of course, all these different traditions also say that everything came from, or Brahma. But then, in the world, there are the traditions which are theistic religions, believing in created gods, such as Zoroastrianism, Christianity, Judaism, Islam. And in India, in the past, there was this non-theistic Sankhya school, which didn't believe in a creator god. And then later came Jainism, which began with Mahavir, who did not believe in a creator god, and then Buddhism also doesn't believe in a creator god. But so, although these different religious traditions have different philosophical concepts, yet their main practice is love and compassion. And even the theistic religious believers, they say that God is infinite love. So no one says God is full of anger. So with such a God, who is infinite love and compassion, we are said to be his children. And therefore, as children of such an infinite love and compassion, we also need to emulate that quality within ourselves, to be compassionate and loving. So even today, there are, amongst the theistic religious practitioners, people who serve communities, who help others in terms of health and education and so forth. Whereas, on the other hand, the non-theistic religious traditions say that our pain and pleasure come from our wholesome or unwholesome actions. So wholesome actions bring about happiness, and unwholesome ones bring about suffering. And these wholesome and unwholesome actions are in turn explained in terms of our mind, whether it's disciplined and controlled or not. As Buddha said, do not commit any non-virtues, cultivate a wealth of virtues, completely tame your mind. This is the teaching of the Buddha. And so, with this understanding of wholesome and unwholesome actions, which we should practice compassion. So, all religious traditions, despite their philosophical differences, have the same message of love and compassion. So here, we are particularly dealing with Buddhism, so which came into the world over 2,500 years ago. So with regard to when the Buddha appeared on this earth, there are different versions. So the popular version is that the Buddha appeared in the world about 2,600 years ago. So, commonly speaking, the Buddha was born in a royal family, a king's family, and until he became enlightened under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya, or the Vajrasana, he was said to be an ordinary sentient being. And then he underwent the 6-year austerity practice. We have a statue of the Buddha in that initiated aspect. So the original statue is in Lahore Museum in Pakistan. When I was a child in Potala Palace, there was a picture of the Bodh Gaya stupa and also a picture of this Buddha in austerity practice. So I inquired where this statue could be, the image of this picture, the original picture image could be, and I found out that it was in Lahore Museum. And one time the Lahore Museum had actually loaned these different artifacts, Buddhist artifacts, at an exhibition in Japan. So I saw that, and then I thought that it would be good to have this Buddha in this austerity aspect, austere aspect. And the image of it could be good to have. So in order to show us the example that in order to become enlightened, we should actually undergo hardships. The Buddha underwent the 6-year severe austerity practice. So once all the conditions for him to become enlightened were gathered, he went through, he actually tread through the path to enlightenment, the path of accumulation, path of application or preparation and so forth. So at dusk, he was said to have overcome the Maras, and then in the middle of the night, he sat totally absorbed in meditation. And then, after becoming enlightened, the Buddha said, this nectar-like here, Dharma, or the experience I have found, which is profound, peaceful, unelaborated, unfabricated, and clear light and uncompounded. So, in terms of the focus of the mind as objects of the focus of objective focus of the mind, this is said to be the profound, peaceful. So, with regard to uncompoundedness, there is explanation of it in Uttara Tantra by Maitreya and so forth. And it is also said to be without any fabrication and clear light or luminous. So the Buddha then said, if I were to teach this to others, nobody will understand it. So nobody can comprehend me. That is true, actually, because at that time, almost all the religious traditions of India were theistic, which believed in an independent self, an entity called self, which is permanent, unchanging, single, and autonomous. And therefore, to teach selflessness, which the Buddha referred to as being profound and so forth, cannot be understood by those people at that time. And then, as people felt inspired by the Buddha's, his bodily actions and his speech and attitudes and so forth, then people began to take interest in him. And then, after 49 days after his enlightenment under the Bodhi tree, he gave. And following those 49 days in silence, the Buddha finally gave the first sermon in Sarnath, where he gave the teaching on the Four Noble Truths, which are the true suffering, true origin and of suffering, and true cessation and true path. So this is the foundational teaching that the Buddha gave on the Four Noble Truths, whereas in Tibet, the genre of teachings called Lamrim, the stages of the path to enlightenment, became very popular and prevalent since the time of Adisha, who wrote The Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. And so with regard to the understanding of suffering and its causes, this comes within the teaching pertaining to the beings of intermediate scope. As Uttara Tantra says, so suffering must be known, and the cause of suffering, the origin of suffering, must be overcome. And to gain health, as one relies on medicine, one the sickness must be acknowledged, and then the cause of sickness must be overcome. And in order to gain health, you should rely on medicine. And then also you should rely on people helping you to take the medicine. So likewise, in the case of the Dharma, the teaching of the Buddha, the suffering must be known, and the origin of suffering must be overcome, and the cessation must be actualized, and then the path must be cultivated. And therefore, we need to understand what the teaching of the Buddha is. As in the 21st century, as I say, we must be 21st century Buddhists. So mostly what we do is, with regard to the teaching of the Buddha, we keep some faith and follow the teaching on the basis of blind faith without really understanding what the teaching is about. And therefore, this is not enough to follow the teaching of the Buddha. And therefore, the Buddha taught the Four Noble Truths, of which he taught the four characteristic features or the aspects of the Four Noble Truths. The aspect of the first truth, which is suffering, are impermanence, the nature of suffering, an empty nature, and then selflessness. And then each of the other Four Noble Truths also have their four characteristics. And so once you understand what true cessation is, then you need... So since cessation is that state where you have overcome the suffering and its causes, and therefore you need to actually know what the root cause of suffering is, which are said to be the three poisons of attachment, hatred, and ignorance, of which ignorance is the root of all the negative emotions. And therefore, since negative emotion, and particularly this ignorance, is not an intrinsic nature of the mind itself, but this ignorance is misconception of the reality, and therefore what it perceives and conceives is not true. And therefore we need to understand that things are without any inherent independent self or entity. And therefore, the understanding of selflessness, within which should be developed, within this understanding of selflessness, there are different degrees of subtlety amongst the Tibetan and amongst the Buddhist philosophical schools. such as Vaibhashikas, Sautantikas, Chittamatras, and Madhyamakas. So each of which in turn have their subclasses or subdivisions. So the understanding of selflessness actually progressively becomes deeper and deeper as you go up the ladder of these four philosophical schools, beginning with Vaibhashika and going on to Sautantika, Chittamatra, and finally Madhyamaka. So when you see the possibility of overcoming these negative emotions, the ignorance and so forth, then you'll see the possibility to attain true cessation, and therefore you have the aspiration to liberation. So otherwise, fearing suffering and then taking refuge in certain higher power, even the non-Buddhist traditions have their own gods and the founding teachers and so forth to whom they take refuge. As Master Tsongkhapa has said, with regard to the teaching of the Buddha, we need to understand the teaching of the Buddha, how the teaching is, what the teaching is about, and then find faith in the teacher. So all the religious traditions teach love, compassion, tolerance. You should not be angry and so forth. So these are religious aspects of the different religious traditions. In order to support these practices, then there are the philosophical concepts, such as the concept or the idea of creator God on the one hand, and those that don't believe in a creator God. So within those of the non-theistic religions, there are also those two groups, which are the ones which believe in independent self or Atman or soul, and those that don't believe in such an independent self. So within the Buddhist philosophical tradition also there are differences in the understanding of selflessness, and even within the Madhyamaka tradition, there are those Madhyamaka followers or philosophers who still assert some kind of objective existence in things. So since all the religious traditions have the same practice of love, compassion, and so forth, therefore there is every reason for us to respect them. Even the Buddha himself, in accordance with the mental dispositions, inclination, interest of his disciples, he even taught to some that there is some kind of self. When he said, as if there is a separate self, which is separate from the body and the mind, when he taught certain disciples that the five psychophysical aggregates are the burdens or the luggage, like a load, and then the one who carries it is the person. So amongst the Nalanda masters also, the Madhyamaka philosophical school, which rejects any form of objective existence in things, whatever, is said to be a nihilist by the other philosophical schools of Buddhism. So we need to see how these other philosophical schools within Buddhism criticize the Madhyamaka tradition, which rejects any objective existence in things, and how Master Nagarjuna responds to them. And so without learning them, we will not understand these teachings. Therefore, we must actually educate ourselves. If we were to learn the alphabet, we need to actually know the alphabet, we need to learn them. And just making a wish to be able to know the alphabet will not make you learn it, cannot make you learn the alphabet. So, of course, through one's practice and training, then there could be people who have very special imprint of certain profound teachings, which even as they hear them in this life, because of their previous imprints, powerful imprints from the past life, they could easily understand them. But this is not easy. We need to train our mind, we need to educate ourselves. And even in the Pali tradition of Buddhism, people should not just be satisfied with recitation of sutras, but we need to actually study them. And then we follow the Chinese student, the Buddhists and the Tibetan Buddhists. We follow Nalanda monastic tradition. So we need to understand what the teaching is about with regard to the basis, how things are explained and ontological status, and then we need to cultivate the path and then see what the result is also. So by understanding the teaching of the Buddha well, we would actually understand what the true Dharma, which comprises the true path and true cessation, and then we would actually be able to understand how someone becomes a Buddha by overcoming all the negativities within his mind stream, and then we'll understand his teaching, that he gives his teaching, and following this teaching, there are those who also become experienced in the teaching and become Arya Sangha. So after becoming enlightened, the Buddha gave the teaching on the Four Noble Truths. And when one understands the suffering nature and impermanent nature and so forth, that is taught as the aspect of the First Noble Truth, and when some people understand it well and their understanding and insight and experience of the teaching progresses further, then the Buddha gave the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. He turned the second wheel of Dharma at Rajagriha, in Gridakoti Rajagriha. And so we have the teaching of the perfection of wisdom sutras. And so this is followed in the Sanskrit tradition, like by Tibetans, Mongolians, and so forth. So within the Panchaparamita, there are those of the short, the Heart Sutra, and then also the 8,000 verses and 18,000 verses and so forth. So because of the difference in the mental dispositions of his disciples, the Buddha taught the same teaching elaborately to some and to others in brief manner. And as it is said that even as the Buddha speaks once, the disciples, according to their mental disposition, would hear the teachings differently. So in order to be able to understand such a thing, we need to understand the Buddha's four bodies, how someone has attained the four Buddha bodies by overcoming the negativities gradually. So that one goes through the bodhisattva grounds, the first 7 bodhisattva grounds, through which one overcomes all the negative emotions, the kleshas, and then in the final 3 stages, or the grounds of bodhisattvas, one also overcomes what are known as cognitive obscurations, and then, having overcome all stains with defilements within one's mind, one becomes enlightened. And then having attained the Dharmakaya, which comprises the Swabhavika Kaya and the Jnanakaya, or the Dharmakaya, and from that Jnanakaya, the Buddha appears in his physical dimensions, such as Sambhogakaya, which is accessible only to the bodhisattvas on the bodhisattva grounds, and then from there emerges that of the Nirmanakaya form of Buddha. And so, in this way, we can explain in great detail about the attainment of Buddhahood in terms of these. And then the Buddha also taught that the basic nature of mind is clear light or luminosity. So with regard to this actualizing this basic luminous nature of the mind, the techniques for actualizing and making this manifest within ourselves is taught in great detail in the tantras, and particularly the highest yoga tantra, in which there is the teaching on the gross forms of the mind and also the subtle form of mind. So those states which arise, those states of mind which arise in us due to certain external conditions are said to be temporary or the coarser levels of mind, because once the external stimulus is gone, then these also, states of mind also cease. And then we have mind in sleep, deep sleep, when the mind is dreaming, and then deep sleep, and then the innermost subtle mind manifests during the dying stage. The final dying stage is called the clear light of mind, the clear light of the dying stage. So this is quite clear that after someone is clinically dead, which means that the heart stops pumping blood, and then because of that, the brain does not get any blood, and therefore then the brain death happens. And so there are many people who said to stay in, even after this clinical death, to stay in some form of meditative poise. And so the phenomenon called Tukdam. And so there have been many people in the recent decades who actually stayed in that state of the Tukdam. And so there's no explanation on the basis of the brain to this phenomena. And so the states of mind which work while the brain is active can be called the gross or the coarser levels of mind. So the subtlest clear light or luminous nature of the mind does not cease when the temporary conditions stop, like the brain activity and so forth stop. It does not necessarily stop. And it does not arise on the basis of some, and is not contingent upon the course or the external conditions. And therefore, this is what the Buddha actually had in mind when he said that he found this nectar-like dharma, which is profound, peaceful, and so forth, uncompounded. And so here, uncompoundedness does not mean that something arises through causes and conditions, and that it does not arise through causes and conditions, but that it is not mutable or that it has existed since time beginningless. So some scientists today are doing have started some project to investigate this Tukdam phenomenon. So even today we have children remembering past lives in the 1970s in Patiala in Punjab state. There was a girl who remembered very clearly her past life. And then in Kanpur also, there was someone, a girl, who remembered her past life very clearly. The Kanpur girl in Kanpur who remembered her past life very clearly, her parents didn't believe in past and future lives. But the girl in her previous life was a girl, and due to certain circumstance, she died. And she had died in that life, and therefore, this girl who remembered her past life, her previous life, had got 4 parents, 2 from this life and 2 from the previous life, because she recognized her past parents of her past life, and then also identified many of the things in that house. And amongst the Tibetan children also, but people the children who remember their past life, gradually as they grow up, this memory fades away. So in their childhood, the past life experience or memory is very clear, whereas the neurological activities of this life, when it becomes more and more active and gains strength, then the memories related with this life becomes supersedes the memories of the past life, and therefore the memories of past life will fade away. But if people do cultivate single-pointed meditation and also sustain this clear light nature of the mind, then they could also remember past life through the power of meditation as well. So if people remember things in the past, because there is something to be remembered, to recall. So this can be explained on the basis of the subtle clear light mind, whereas the coarser levels or layers of mind that work in this life are contingent upon the organs and the brain neurons of this life. So the Buddha laid down the foundational teachings of Buddhism in the teaching of the Four Noble Truths, which teaches the true suffering, true path, true cessation, and then true cessation and true path. And then in the second turning of the wheel, he elaborated the true cessation, on the true cessation. And then in the third turning of the wheel of Dharma, he elaborated on the clear light nature of the mind, which is to say, he elaborated on the true path. And then regarding the clear light nature of the mind, it is actually taught in greater detail and more precision, with more precision in the Tantra, highest Yoga Tantra. So the third turning of the wheel, teaching the clear nature of the mind, is actually becomes like a link to the Sutrayana, a link from the Sutrayana to the Tantrayana. Within the Tantra, there are those of the Kriya, Charya Yoga and Anuttara Yoga Tantra. Within the Anuttara Yoga Tantra, which teaches, emphasizes especially on the clear light nature of the mind. So although all the 4 Tantras have the teaching of emptiness, which comes when we practice Tantra, we come across the mantra, Om Swabhava mantra. And then Shune the jnana Vajasabhava-atmakoham. Jnana refers to this clear light, subtle mind. And so the most profound teaching on the clear light nature of the mind comes in the highest yoga tantra. So this has to be actualized through one's meditative concentration, developing meditative concentration, not through some physical action or activities. So in the perfection vehicle, there is also teaching on cultivation of meditative concentration by focusing one's mind on things like pieces of wood and pebbles and so forth. But while cultivating single-pointed meditation, and as Buddhists, particularly if we are able to use an image of the Buddha, it helps to overcome the obstacles to the single-pointed concentration, which are those of the mental dullness or excitement and mental laxity or sinking. So the main purpose of the highest yoga tantra is to actualize and to make the clear light mind manifest. And in order to be able to do that, we also have to help this meditation, we have the meditation where the practitioner visualizes himself or herself as a deity. And to arise into a deity, in the form of a deity, one transforms into a deity, goes through the transformative process by visualizing first some syllable, a letter, and then that transforms into some symbol, and that symbol in turn transforms into the oneself as deity, and so forth. And so these stages of meditation are taught in the Guhyasamaja teachings on Guhyasamaja Tantra of Master Nagarjuna, where he goes through the basis level 3 kayas or 3 bodies of the Buddha, the path level 3 kayas, and then the resultant 3 kayas. So these teachings, in other words, show us how we should progress from the lower practices and experiences to the higher ones. As just like going through some school system, we start with the kindergarten and then go on to the junior school and middle school and high school and then the higher education systems. So the teachings of the Buddha have to be understood as a progressively becoming higher and higher as you go from the Sutrayana to the higher, the Tantrayana. And so Nyingön Tsungrapa, one of the great Tibetan scholars of the previous century, maybe and then who was a non-sectarian follower of the teachings of the Buddhism in Tibet. And then there were other masters like Chugutsullo and so forth, who were the non-sectarian followers. And so Nyingön Tsungrapa has actually come up with this term, the mainstream teaching of the Buddha, and then the esoteric teaching specifically tailored for individuals. So the tantric teachings come under the second category, which is these esoteric, specifically tailored teachings, whereas the Sutrayana teachings come under the first category of mainstream teaching of the Buddha. So without understanding the mainstream teaching of the Buddha, there are dangers of actually misunderstanding and misinterpreting the highest Yoga Tantra teachings, which are meant for very specific disciples. So with the foundation of having the foundation of the mainstream teaching within oneself, then if you go into the tailored, specifically tailored teachings, you'll be able to actually explain the different practices and topics that come in these teachings in accordance with which practices come under which category and so forth. So in Tibet, people actually said that the tantric rituals and tantric practices are very profound and so forth, and didn't really have much understanding of the mainstream teaching, and that is wrong. So first, we should gain a good understanding of the teaching that comes under the three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. The first turning, teaching of the wheel of Dharma, which teaches the Four Noble Truths, and then the second and third turnings. And so in the Nyingma tradition, there are mentions of the 9 vehicles. The first 3 are said to be the teachings of the Shravakas, Pratyeka Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas, and then the 3 outer tantras, and then there are the 3 inner tantras, Maha, Anu, and Adi yogas. So in the Maha Yoga of the 3 inner tantras, you go through the generation stage practice, and then in the Anu Yoga Tantra, you go through the completion stage where you use the coarser level of mind, and then in the Adi Yoga, you use the innermost subtle mind, transform that into the path. So Kirtan Nosang Gyatso has said that when the clear light mind is manifest in you, there is this experience of as if you have gained insight into emptiness directly. So here we are talking about the subtle degrees of mind itself. So from the coarser level, which dissolves, the coarser level dissolving, and then you actualize those of the subtle levels, layers of mind, and then come to the subtlest nature, the innermost subtle clear light. So if you are able to overcome, reach that state of the subtle, innermost subtle level of mind, all the negative emotions and which arise on the basis of the coarser level of mind would dissolve. And therefore, this Adi Yoga is called the vehicle of mastering the skill. So within the teaching of the Nyingma tradition, there are the practices called the 8 herukas, Drupakagye. So this particular initiation comes under the lineage of the knowledge holders. So with regard to the visionary, pure visionary teachings and pure visions, there are visions in the visionary teachings in the Sakya and Gelug teaching traditions as well. And so all the different Tibetan Buddhist traditions have the pure vision teachings. So the distant lineage of the words of the Buddha and then the teaching of the Buddha is divided or categorized into the distant lineage of the words of the Buddha and then the near lineage of the Dharma, the revealed treasure teachings, and then the profound teachings of the visionary, pure visions. So this particular initiation comes under the category of the pure vision, profound teachings of the pure visions, which the fifth Dalai Lama had. So there are many different, in the 35 cycles of teaching of pure visions of the fifth Dalai Lama, there are many different initiations and transmissions and so forth. And so here, with regard to pure visions, there are pure visions which happen to the sixth mind, and then the pure visions that which happens to the sensory perception. So this particular one is a vision, pure vision, that happened to the fifth Dalai Lama on the sensory level. So there is a history or a story about this initiation. So this particular, so the Khenze Wangpo's text mentions that this particular teaching initiation comes under the pure vision teachings and instructions, within which there are many different traditions. But this particular one, he says, appeared to or came to the Manjushri himself in person, the fifth Dalai Lama. So within the vision or pure visions, there are those actual visionary teachings, and then those visions which happen in dreams, and also some kind of a simulated experience. So these visionary teachings of the fifth Dalai Lama have been sealed with different names. So when the fifth Dalai Lama, in the year fire monkey year, he was sitting in a meditation. He had this vision where he saw the wrathful deities shooing away obstacles, and the Chinese princess Gyamusa coming out of the mandala and opening the door and curtain. The Vidyadhara Pema Tinle, and then Dorjitak knowledge holder, Derda Lingpa. were passed on. I mean, the fifth Dalai Lama, after having these visions, he passed on this lineage to the Rinjin Petin and Dojita. And then it came down through in the unbroken lineage down to Dharamshala, and from him I received it. So, in order to do tantric practice, we need to be mentally matured or ripened for that practice. So, what that means is there is this ripening of the basis, and the ripening in terms of the path and so forth. And so ripening in terms of the basis means that this initiation is given in order to mature our innermost subtle mind. So the mind is always accompanied by this subtle wind energy as well, and therefore the cognitive nature is the clear light mind, and there is a cognitive nature, which is the mind, the aspect of the mind, and then there is the movement towards the object, which is the aspect of the wind. So the wind energy transforms into the Buddha's body and that of the speech. And then also within this subtle mind, of course, there is also the potential for our mind to become the Buddha's mind. So according to the Abhisamaya Alamkara, so Tathagata Garbha is explained in terms of the empty nature of the mind, the emptiness of the mind of sentient beings which are defiled, whereas in the Mahayana Uttara Tantra by Maitreya, the Buddha nature is explained in terms of this clear light mind. And then in Tantra, particularly the highest yoga Tantra, so the Buddha's form body has its roots in the minds of sentient beings. And so for the four Buddha bodies, there's the basic potential for us to manifest this within ourselves. So since we have the basic potential for the four Buddha bodies, which is to say that we have the aspect of the seed for them, we need to, when we go through the initiation, with the help of the mantras, the different materials that are used to give initiation, and then the power of meditation, single-pointed meditation, we actually make this seed, rather the mind itself, teeming with, so that the seed is about, it could sprout within the field of the mind. So the first initiation leaves the imprint for the Buddha body, the form body, and then those of the second and third initiations gives the transmission of the Anuyoga Tantra, and then the fourth initiation is for that actualization of the subtlest mind. So the disciples must imagine themselves at the eastern door and repeat this. Na zo chu ca za cho. Dom jin king gi ponyar che. Mari go che da so nam. Sibe cholen jewe che, in order to liberate us from this samsara. We request the guardians of at the door of the mandala to open the door and let us in, inside the mandala. So what this says is, if you are an evil being like the Maras or Tirthikas, and also following the lower vehicles, you should not enter. Please repeat. Tejo mindru tunyena. Tedun dala nawanzu. Tedun dala nawanzu. Tedun dala nawanzu. So we have the meaning of these lines is, as I said earlier, you should have this mind, the spirit of enlightenment, bodhicitta, which comes through the practice of brought about by love and compassion. And so, to accomplish one's own goal, the best means is bodhicitta. If you are angry and arrogant and jealous, these states of mind arise when you are selfish, with a selfish motive. And therefore, with the selfish motive, we are not actually able to think about the well-being of others. And so when a slight provocation happens to us, then we become angry or jealous and so forth. And then the root of these is our attachment. So because of holding oneself as superior to others, then you think that things that are opposed to your own desire, the actions of others that are opposed to your own desire, you become angry at them. So all our misfortunes and ruinous actions come through this attachment to oneself, within which there is this grasping at some independent kind of a self, and then also considering oneself, cherishing oneself too much. And so because these self-attachments bring about ruins to us, we need to overcome this. Just as you consider yourself precious, likewise others also are precious, because each and every being considers themselves precious and cherish themselves. And then we are all same in wanting happiness and not wanting suffering. And therefore, why think only of the happiness of oneself alone? Because with this selfish motive, when you're too self-centered, then you are unhappy, more unhappy. Whereas if you actually release your mind of this, from the grip of this self-love, then self-attachment, then you will also feel free. So I know a scientist, Aaron Beck by name. So when someone is angry, the person or the object whom you are angry at looks absolutely negative, whereas 90% of that negativeness is one's own mental projection. So as he is not a religious person, but a scientist, I'm not flattering the scientist here when I actually bring about these examples. So even in Buddhist epistemology, we have the objects of knowledge divided into three: those that are obvious, those that are slightly hidden or obscured, and then those that are extremely obscure. So with regard to this hidden phenomenon, in Brahmanavartika, Master Dharmakirti says that because the main teaching of the Buddha does not contradict reason, therefore the extremely hidden phenomena could be inferred to be true. The teachings which pertain to the extremely hidden phenomena could also be considered and regarded as true. Therefore, what we need to do is investigate into the teaching of the Buddha himself. So when you do this investigation through reason and logic, of course, they must finally come to one's own experience. So even the hidden phenomena must actually be corroborated with our own experience. And the scientists usually touch the obvious phenomena. And when they actually come to speculate about certain things which are not cannot be verified through the experiments and the tools and so forth, then they develop some doubt about it. And then they go through logic and they say that, for example, when they actually examine some things like a vase, they could break it up into its pieces and then go down to the subtlest particles, and finally they say that nothing exists objectively. So if we actually have to follow reason, then when some certain things are not cannot be explained on the obvious level, and then we actually have the backing of the scientist also, that saying that things have no objective existence. So the teaching of the Buddha and the Nalanda masters, like Master Nagarjuna and his disciples and followers, as well as Master Sangha and so forth, as well as Dharmakirti, Dignaga Dharmakirti. And they are the eye-openers of the world, true eye-openers. With regard to the teachings of Master Nagarjuna, we come across teachings which are similar to the quantum physics, saying that things have no objective existence, whatever. And then in the teachings of Master Sangha and so forth, we have very great information about psychology. And then Dignaga and Dharmakirti use logic and reasoning. So since things are dependent on other factors, they arise in dependence on other factors, our outlook on things could be broadened. And usually when we see things, we actually have this notion that they have some kind of objective, independent existence. and that narrows our perspective. Whereas when we are angry, within the understanding, through the understanding of things being dependently arisen, and then when we actually say someone is our enemy and so forth, whereas initially we might think that the enemy, the so-called enemy, is right there as our absolute target, but then when your mind calms down, you will be able to see that there is no such an independent target. So whereas when you have this holistic view, seeing things from a broader perspective, the negative emotions also, which actually perceive some independent target, whether it's attachment or anger, they have their independent targets. And whereas with this holistic view, you find that there is no such independent existence of things. And so you'll see how the negative emotions arise through an exaggerated outlook on things, some kind of a fantasizing. And so the Master Nagarjunas, in order to understand the Four Noble Truths, you need to understand these lines of Madhyamaka Avatara, Mula Madhyamaka Karika. And then Master Nagarjuna says that if you understand dependent origination well, you'll understand the Four Noble Truths well. And within these Four Noble Truths, there is the true cessation, which finally refers to that of at its final stage, refers to liberation. And so Master Nagarjuna says cessation of the exhaustion of karma and delusions. Through the exhaustion of karma and delusion, there is liberation. And karma and delusions or negative emotions arise through the concepts. So usually we say that karma arises through negative emotions, and they in turn arise through conceptions. And then in the Avatara, it also says attachment, anger, and ignorance arise through some conceptual thought. And then seeing things attractive or unattractive. When we see things that are attractive or unattractive, we have this notion of the attractiveness and unattractiveness. There's an exaggerated way of looking at it, and which is called the inappropriate mentation. So that is what Master Nagarjuna refers to as the conceptual thought. So misconception, through misconception, we have this exaggerated outlook on things as being called attractive and unattractive. So this the inappropriate mentation arises because of seeing things as if they have some objective, perceiving them as if they have some objective existence. So the things are seen, or they look as if they have some independent objective existence. And then accordingly also, we have this conception, we conceive them to have that way of existence. And this is referred to in Mula Madhyamaka Karika as fabrication. And so the mental conceptions arise through elaboration, and elaboration is ended by emptiness. So Kundalama Lama Rinpoche, when he was giving me teaching on the Mula Madhyamaka Karika, said that this final line in Sanskrit reading could be read in two different ways. One where one could say this elaboration or fabrication could be ended or ceased by emptiness. And then in the other reading, he said this elaboration could be, or fabrication could be ceased within emptiness. So when you see the truth, then you will have liberation, whereas without seeing the truth, we are left in samsara. So seeing the truth or the reality unmistakably could give us this understanding that fabrication is ceased by emptiness. And then these different conceptions, the discursive conceptions and so forth, dissolve within that emptiness. And so when we talk about liberation, it has to be understood on the basis of the mind. Whichever interpretation you take of this last line, the second one, which says the fabrication dissolves within the emptiness, refers to the attainment of the path, the true path. So the text that we have recited earlier says, due to the power of the great compassion, we, in order to, we have the motivation to liberate all sentient beings. So if we only have the principle of spirit of enlightenment, this bodhicitta alone, then it's difficult to overcome the grasping at some kind of absolute true existence in things and phenomena and self. Whereas when it is complemented by the wisdom realizing emptiness, then we could actually have the courage and the pride to say bye-bye to negative emotions. So with the help of this wisdom realizing things, lacking any things being devoid of any true independent existence, then we'll be able to see how the negative emotions could be ended from within our mind. And therefore, since I aspire to the Mahayana maturing and the liberative path, please bestow this upon me. These lines are the ones that we have repeated 3 times and have a clear understanding of these principles of bodhicitta and the understanding of emptiness. So the Guru transforms into the Guru Rinpoche in the aspect of Sahur and Tödengzel. So this is to drive away any obstacles that may be there to the process of the initiation. So the offerings are blessed with Ramyam Kam. and then purified through the mantra of emptiness, or bhava mantra, and then from within the state of emptiness, a drum syllable arises, and that transforms into a great vessel, in which is the Om, which transforms in Om syllable, which transforms into this inexhaustible heap of torma, and the which is in the nature of the five objects of sense. So I've given the explanation earlier. So make a mandala offering, a short mandala offering, to request the Guru to lead us into the mandala. May this sound of the great Dharma, the great Dharma drum, dispel the suffering of all sentient beings. May the Guru live for eons and to give teachings. So since I decided to give the initiation, it was my own decision to give the initiation, but then since the Kashak learned about it, they also wanted to be the sponsor for the initiation. So I am the main sponsor for this initiation. The reason why I do this is in general for the people following the teaching of the Buddha, and particularly the Nalanda tradition that has spread in Tibet, which can be explained through reason and logic. Those followers of such tradition, and then there are many Chinese who follow this, and then there are many people in the Western countries also who follow this tradition, and particularly the people of Tibet, the snowland, which is especially has a special connection with Avalokiteśvara, and particularly myself, I also have a special connection through karma and my aspirations. And so for these people, I'm doing this initiation. And then when you'll be going through the recitation of the six-syllable mantra, the six. So while reciting the mantra 600 million times, you might fall asleep. I don't know if while you may be appearing to be falling asleep, you may have some pure visions, but it's important not to fall asleep. So for me, as an old man, I get tired easily to give long teachings, and therefore it's important for me to take rest as well. So we have done the mandala offering to request the Guru to lead us into the mandala. So use the blindfolds. So when you enter the mandala, you have to make an offering of flowers. So the Kashak, the Tibetan Cabinet Ministry, is the sponsor, and so they need the blindfold. He's going to say. You're also given a piece of flower. So imagine that you have been given a garland of flowers, and which is actually to be offered to the deity when you enter the mandala. Please repeat these request lines. embodiment of the compassion of all Buddhas, Lokeshvara. Please lead us into the mandala and to mature and liberate us. So the Avalokiteśvara is said to be a deity who is praised by all the Buddhas. So this has to do with the great compassion, the principle of great compassion, which is praised right in the beginning of Madhyamaka Avatara by Chandrakirti. So he makes salutes, great compassion. And then Master Nagarjuna also salutes the Buddha by saying, and moved by your compassion, you taught the sacred Dharma and so forth. And then Dignaga praises the Buddha for becoming a reliable being, an authority, and that actually comes through the power of compassion. So in the beginning, the Buddha generated bodhicitta to benefit all sentient beings. And that bodhicitta is brought about by the force of compassion. And then the fact that the bodhisattvas, the Buddha engaged in the bodhisattva practices is because of on the strength of this compassion. And then at the end, in the end, when the Buddha became enlightened, fully enlightened, he's moved to give teachings to help sentient beings by his compassion. So the wisdom realizing emptiness that the Buddha had developed within himself actually becomes a force to overcome our negative emotions as well as these imprints left by them because of compassion. So the realization of emptiness becomes that the wisdom which has all aspects, the excellent aspects, means that it is complemented by this great compassion. And therefore, it is reasonable to praise Avalokiteśvara as being someone who is praised by all the Buddhas. I mean, not talking about human beings, even with regard to animals, the more compassionate and more loving they are towards the earth and hurt, they are actually loved by others more. So if humanity as a whole could have to be more compassionate, there is going to be greater happiness, without which it's difficult. So Avalokiteśvara, the noble Avalokiteśvara, is the embodiment of all the Buddhas, and the embodiment of all the Buddhas, the compassion of all the Buddhas, arising in the form of a deity. And Manjushri is the embodiment of all the wisdom of the Buddhas, arising in the form of a deity. And then so here, the Avalokiteśvara, of course, regarding Avalokiteśvara, there are many different aspects. And so here, the Avalokiteśvara is in the form of So in the center we have the main deity of Avalokiteśvara, and surrounded by four other Avalokiteśvaras. In the east there is Lokeshvara, Vairocana Lokeshvara. In the south is the Ratnasambhava Avalokiteśvara. In the west, Amitabha Avalokiteśvara. And then in the north is Amoghasiddhi Lokeshvara. And then there are four other guardian deities at the four doors. So this makes up 9 deities. Please repeat these. So please lead us into the mandala of Avalokiteśvara, who is the embodiment of all the compassion of all the Buddhas, and ripen and liberate us. So I have done the practices during the preparatory ritual to arise or transform myself into Avalokiteśvara, and also visualizing Avalokiteśvara in the mandala in front. So the central Avalokiteśvara in the center of the mandala is Akshobhya standing on the corolla of the flower and radiant and white, smiling, both eyes gazing on the wandering beings, and with 2 hands and 1 face. So imagine all the host of deities of the 3 roots. So maybe it's good to do bodhicitta ceremony here. As I said earlier, in Bodhisattvacharya Avatara, having pondered what is best, for eons, the Buddha saw bodhicitta to be the sole factor for attaining one's own, for accomplishing one's own and others' welfare. So it is bodhicitta which is the most powerful factor for accomplishing one's and others' aims. From our own experience as well, even as an ordinary person, the more compassionate and affectionate there are, the more friends that person would have, whether the friends are animals, dogs, or human beings. Whereas if someone is full of anger and selfish, motivated, no other people will come near him or her, and not even the dogs and cats will come around him or her. So, with compassionate attitude, people will come to you, and with selfish, self-centered motivation, you'll actually push people away from you. So even when you feed animals and birds, for example, like crows or ravens, when your motivation is sincere, and they would also actually feel that. And when your motivation is something else, even if you feed them, they really are cautious to come to you. So unless you are able to exchange one's joy and happiness with the suffering of others, the Master Shantideva in the Bodhicharya Avatara says that that leave alone becoming a Buddha, even in this samsara, even while you are in samsara, you will not have happiness. So if you are full of anger, even scientists say that if you are full of anger and constantly overcome with anxiety and fear, even scientists say that they actually weaken your immune system. Whereas if you are peaceful and within, then it helps your immune system, it strengthens your immune system. One good news for us is that some scientists, through their experiment, have found that the basic human nature is compassionate. So when I heard this, I really felt hopeful of the human race, and since since compassion is the basic human nature, if we could use this human life to spread compassion in the world, of course, we can do it, and then make the world more compassionate. Whereas if anger is our nature, basic nature, then we cannot change that. For example, fire cannot be made cold because of its own nature being hot. And then water, since it's fluid, its nature cannot be changed. That fluidity. And therefore, since basic human nature is compassionate, we have a hope. So if parents bring up their children in a compassionate atmosphere, affectionate, loving atmosphere, then the children also will have that trait and to carry on with this trait throughout their life and be compassionate and loving and affectionate to others. If we look at children playing together, they don't bother about which race or social background and so forth they come from. They play together happily. Whereas through education, as we grow up and we become more and more educated, we tend to become more and more divided on the basis of the color, creed, and so forth, and social background, and so forth. So this is the source of problems. So this cannot be overcome by making prayers or by spending money and wealth. So we should actually reduce the sense of division, thinking on I and us and they, us and them, and think more on the level of being go down to the basic humanness of ourselves. And therefore, Shantideva says, which intelligent person would feel discouraged to ride the horse of bodhicitta, which leads one from bliss to bliss, and overcomes our despair. So with this practice of bodhicitta, if you could actually carry on with it for months and years and decades, then you will see the effect, the result of it. So Shantideva says this verse, and then in summary, Shantideva says that may I be a sustenance, multiple sustenance for beings like those of space and elements. And then Master Nagarjuna also makes such prayer like those of the water, fire, and so forth. May I be sustenance and enjoyment, called objects of enjoyment for beings, just as they like. And so, teaching of the Buddha, and particularly in the tradition, is very profound in respect of these principles and practice of compassion, bodhicitta, and emptiness. So we are born as human beings, and not only that, we have met with the teaching of the Buddha, and we should feel fortunate, not only thinking that we are fortunate, but as best to the best of your ability, you should try to at least leave an imprint of bodhicitta and the wisdom of emptiness within one's mind stream. Even if you are not able to reach true cessation within one's life, you still should work towards some experience, towards gaining some sort of experience which are like a simulated experience of, or that actually pertain to that true cessation. So we make prayers to do we make prayers where we say, I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I'm enlightened, and so forth. But if they just remain in words and not your practice, then it doesn't mean much. Even if you may not back off from the practice of bodhicitta and so forth, still, reciting mantras, doing some tantric practice may be good, but the most important thing is to develop this spirit of enlightenment, bodhicitta, and also the wisdom of emptiness. So we make this prayer where we say, may, as long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too abide in order to dispel the suffering of the wandering beings. So this kind of courage we are thinking of to cultivate within ourselves. And this is precious. So this bodhicitta is the source of eliminating poverty of sentient beings. It is that sun that shines to eliminate the darkness of the spirit mind. It is that cream, the butter, which is churned out of the ocean of dharma. So with the bodhicitta, which is fully supported by the wisdom of emptiness, the wisdom of emptiness, which is fully supported by bodhicitta, we have such an opportunity to practice and cultivate this. And this is really makes us fortunate. So in the mandala, there are 9 deities. And then in the space within the mandala, imagine all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and objects of refuge. And so imagine the Buddha Shakyamuni himself, who is the embodiment of the 4 Buddha bodies, and then his 7 successors, such as the great Mahakashyapa, as well as the great Bodhisattvas, and also Master Nagarjuna and the great Nalanda masters, as well as the Mahasiddhas, such as Saraha, Vidabhapa, and so forth, as well as the masters of the lineage of the Nyingma, as well as the Sarma traditions of Tibet, and also the Chinese masters who have done a great work of bringing the teaching of the Buddha to China, and also who have kept up with this tradition. So with all these lineage masters and deities and Buddha and so forth in one's mind, please kneel on your right knee and repeat these lines of taking refuge and bodhicitta. So many of you may know these lines. So the lines go, I take refuge in the 3 jewels. I confess individually all negativities. I rejoice in the merits of all beings. I take to heart the state of Buddhahood. And I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly. And in order to attain enlightened mind, in order to fulfill one's self and others, I'll generate bodhicitta, which means the aspiring bodhicitta. And then the next line shows that of the venturing bodhicitta. And it says, I shall develop a supreme enlightened motive, and towards all sentient beings, my invited guests, I shall act with supreme enlightened conduct. So, calling upon all sentient beings as one's guests means that you are going to help them to reach higher rebirth and that of the definite emergence, the definite goodness, which is liberation. So the temporary as well as the ultimate or the lasting happiness that you are going to bring them. And then for higher rebirth, of course, there are the practices of morality, abstaining from the 5 non-virtuous acts. So Master Nagarjuna gives, on top of the 10 non-virtuous, abstaining from 10 non-virtuous actions, he also gives 6 more factors. So there are these 16 factors that one embodies within oneself that leads one to the higher rebirths. So you call upon all sentient beings as your guests for this temporary goal, and then the ultimate goal, which is the definite goodness, which is specifically the omniscient state of Buddhahood. And so, in other words, you are saying that you're going to practice the 3 principal aspects of the path, which are the determination to be free from samsara and bodhicitta, as well as the correct view of emptiness. And then you say, I shall act with supreme enlightened conduct, which means that you give up any and all kinds of selfish motive. And therefore, you don't stay within this motivation alone, the aspiration to become enlightened, but you actually wish to engage in the practices leading to that goal of enlightenment, the omniscient state of Buddhahood. And therefore, you wish to keep the 18 root downfalls and the precepts which comprise of the 18 root downfalls and the 46 secondary infractions of bodhisattvas. So if you are able to restrain the extreme self-centered motivation, self-centered attitude, then you will not look down upon others and think of oneself as superior and so forth. You will not engage in other words, you will not engage in the 18 root downfalls and 46 secondary ones. Please repeat this. I seek refuge in the 3 jewels. I confess individual all negativities. I rejoice in the merits of all beings. I take to heart Buddha's Buddhahood. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Assembly, and I do so to attain enlightened mind in order to fulfill my aims of myself and others. I shall develop a supreme enlightened motive, and towards all sentient beings, my invited guests, I shall act with supreme enlightened conduct. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. Please repeat it for the 2nd time. I seek refuge in the 3 jewels. I confess individual all negativities. I rejoice in the merits of my creation. All beings, I take to heart the state of Buddhahood. I take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I'm enlightened. I do so to attain enlightened mind in order to fulfill my aims of myself and others. I should develop supreme enlightened motive, and towards all sentient my invited guests, I shall act with supreme enlightened conduct. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And then, at the end of the 3rd repetition, when you say, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient. So when you say, in order to, in order to attain enlightened mind for the benefit of myself and others, you think of having generated that of the spirit of enlightenment, which is the aspiring. And then at the end of this repetition, when you say, may I become Buddha to benefit all sentient beings, you should feel convinced that you have received the complete set of bodhisattva vows. Please repeat to the Buddha Dharma, to the 3 jewels, I go for refuge. I confess individual all negativities. I rejoice in the merits of all beings. Take to heart the state of Buddhahood. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened. The Buddha Dharma and Supreme Assembly. I do so to attain enlightened motive in order to fulfill the aims of myself and others. I shall develop supreme enlightened motive, and towards all things to be my invited guests, I shall act with supreme enlightened conduct. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. May the supreme, sublime bodhisattva arise where it has not arisen, may it increase ever further. As long as peace endures, as long as sentient beings remain, may I too remain to dispel the misery of wandering beings. Please sit down. So with this, we are done with taking the bodhisattva vows. Please, đạo所看人心间马律吧。造我顺己经过好做了。让日本的多吉生别些，让我马这第四夹出去。让日本的多吉生别些，让我马这第四夹出去。让日本的多吉生别些，让我马这第四夹出去。I take refuge in the three roots until I'm able to see my true face, which is also called the Vajrasattva, the glorious Vajrasattva. So which means the Buddha nature that is within ourselves. So this is said within the understanding of the non-duality or non-divisibility, indivisibility of the samsara nirvana. Dans la dernière vedon sanke, jerdon wa je dugun teveche, dagun lana me benejuche, nyam lan chandu chendeche basim, dagun lana me benejuche, nyam lan chendeche basim keto. So here it is said that this primordially existing nature within me which means that this mind has no beginning. Because if you actually posit a beginning to the mind, then you will actually face logical fallacies. So all the external world is made up of these subtle particles, and each of these particles also go through change moment by moment. And since they are brought about by causes and conditions, there are those of the two, which is twofold, the substantial and cooperative conditions. So if you were to trace the beginning of this material world, you will not be able to pinpoint that beginning. So the particles of this world that we live in, and our body and so forth, the mere matters, were there. I mean, they began with the Big Bang. Of course, with the Big Bang also, there must have been other causes and conditions. In the Kala Chakra Tantra, there is mention of the space particle, and then from that space particle, the external world arises, and then they become some basis, appropriate basis suitable basis for sentient beings to live in, and therefore sentient beings come about. And so just as in the external world, there is no beginning to the particles, likewise, in our own experience of the mind, we see change. And therefore, change occurs through causes and conditions. And therefore, within the causes, there is the substantial cause and then the cooperative conditions. So the mind being cognitive and having the nature of clarity and awareness has to come from its own cause, which has a similar aspect to it. And therefore, it has to come through some homogeneous cause and condition with regard to the substantial cause. So why this is so is nature. That basic clarity and awareness nature of the mind is not because of our karma or not because of some doing of the Buddhas, but its nature. So when we use logic and reasoning to prove things, we need to base it on the nature, how things come about by nature. And also the functionality of things has to be explained on the basis of the nature of things. So the clarity, the luminous and awareness nature of the mind is the nature of mind itself, consciousness, which has to come from something which already has that aspect. These aspects cannot come from something which is not, which does not have these qualities. So in the Dzogchen tradition, there is this introduction to the basic pristine awareness nature of the mind, which is not an easy thing to do, of course. And we go through the dying process, and therefore in the dissolution process, we go through, in the end, the four empty natures or empty states. And so that's this complete Buddhahood that we have, since primarily refers to the fourth empty state. Lama yidam khanru shep yinda peme denla shu yunga yisum khajat chena samwe chebab nyamcha dite tamje sha. So this is 7-limb practice. Mindre sanga chugo nyanga mida sawat nyumba simje tendo yanda doje tendo sho nimbu simje tendo. I dedicate all the essence for the sentient being's sake, and may I realize the perfect Vajra nature or meaning. Next is taking the tantric vows. So usually we have other lines that we recite for the tantric practice, but here the wordings are different, but the meaning is same. Please kneel on your right knee. So the Bodhisattva vow leads one to the Buddhahood, and the tantric vows actually takes us to that state of Buddhahood more quickly. So with regard to these three types of vows, the Pratimoksha vow, Bodhisattva vow, and Tantric vow, they are progressively higher to the lower ones. So please have this motivation to take the Tantric vows, and also that you will pledge to keep these vows. Please repeat this. This is the Bodhisattvas of the 3 times, 10 directions 4 times, and so forth. So the great compassionate host of deities, please pay attention to me. From now on, until I reach the unsurpassed state of the 3 jewels, I take refuge. Then you take Bodhisattva vows. 견제 빼매르기 탐지 탐지 말이 용수 송war차 나존 레기리 탐지 덤된 최배라는 점버차 개발 황화 대진 도지숨 거기 고숨 냠조 주바다 shedan 미반 당도 나와다 주단 제발 차왕강아티 니슈자게 자와양라제 상아도지 닝부 동복군 상아도지 닝부 동복군 나가마리 용수 송war차 대이 조군 시줄레데 남면도지 창기 사르톱쇼 Please repeat it for the second time. So first you take refuge and then take the bodhisattva vows and then the vows of Tantra pertaining to the 5 Buddha families and then also the 28 commitments. I'll not cause decline to the bodhicitta but keep 진반능신대로 쩨버치 준제 빼매르기 탐지 탐주 마리용수 송war치 저 링기니기 탐지 넘된 튜베레나 쩨버치 개발 황화 대진 도지수 나기 고sun 냠조 주바타 shedan 미반 당도 나와 루단 쩨버치와 강아 니슈자제 자와양라제 상아도 진행배 담바군 다기 말이 용서 좀 대인 조군 시설렌데 사면 도지 상기 사톱쇼 시에서 매바 당도 나와서는 풍부르는 디시는 다야 다는 신 온도 특히 태과서 송인데 아니 너무 정신시를 거네 아니 그게 너무 보야 So in the text you come across these lines which says the understanding and not abandoning. So understanding refers to becoming aware of the nature of the 5 Buddha families, and then not giving up or abandoning means that you understand the basic nature of the negative emotions. And then there are 28 different precepts that you keep that is mentioned here, that are mentioned here also. And so you repeat it for the 3rd time when you say, may I attain the unsurpassable Vajradhara state. Imagine, feel convinced that you have received the full set of tantric vows. Yes, I'll keep all the precepts pertaining to the 5 Buddha families. 탐제 말이 용수 송war차 나조 레기리기 탐제 체외나를 쩨버차 제발 황화 대진 도지숨 다기 고송 냠조 주바다 shedan 미방 당도 나와다 주다 쩨버차와 강아데 니슈자게 자와양라제 상아도지 닝부 동바군 다기 말이 용수 송war차 대 조군 시줄렌데 데노멘다지 창기 스타트업쇼 Please sit down. So although this universal or generating the universal yoga mind is not mentioned in this initiation rite, I find it very important to do this, and therefore When I take the self-initiation, do the self-initiation in a mandala, I consider it's important to do this. And so let us do it here as well. As I explained earlier, this bodhicitta, which holds others dearer than oneself, is the best means to attain higher rebirth as well as to attain definite goodness. Because serving others means that you restrain from harming others, which is the practice of morality. Restraining from. So this practice of restraining harming others has to come on the basis of thinking of others. So all the excellences that we could actually gain in one's life, such as power, wealth, name, and longevity, and so forth, comes from thinking of the welfare of others more than oneself. So morality is the basis of all our other practices. So higher rebirth, liberation for oneself, and also the omniscient state of Buddhahood comes on the basis of morality. So the resultant state of Buddhahood comes from the thinking of motivating to benefit others, and also engaging in the practices leading to that goal also comes about through this practice of altruism. As Shantideva says, all suffering in the world comes through selfish motive, thinking only of one's own happiness, and all happiness in the world comes from thinking of the welfare of others. So far we have rather remained ignorant of these facts. And we have not even kind of put effort in understanding these. So, if you do not consider doing this practice of cultivating bodhicitta in this life, when will you do? When will I do it? And so generate this spirit of enlightenment, which is to say, to thinking of becoming a Buddha, fully enlightened being for the benefit of all sentient beings. So the sentient beings who are as limitless as the expanse of the space do not want suffering but want happiness. So to lead them to the temporary happiness, happy states of higher rebirth, and also to the highest goal of enlightenment, Buddhahood, you should determine with this determination to become enlightened for their sake. This bodhicitta transforms at your heart into a white moon disk. Imagine this, and then next is the meditation on emptiness. As Mula Madhyamaka Karika says, not the aggregates, not separate or different from the aggregates. It is not in it, they are not in it. The Tathagata does not possess aggregates, what is the Tathagata? And so use these lines to refer to oneself, switch Tathagata to yourself. And then Master Nagarjuna also says, a person is neither water, earth, wind, fire, space, no consciousness. What else is a person then? So sometimes when we think about the identity of an individual, we may get the idea that, oh, this consciousness is the identity, final identity of the person. So if you were to say that, then within the mind or consciousness, there is this clear light nature of the mind, the subtlest, most subtle mind. If you were to say that is the person, and that in turn cannot be found when you dissect it into its temporal moments and further into its smaller parts and moments. You will not find anything as being the clear light mind as well. So nothing whatever of the aggregates, whether the body, the physical, or the mind, can be posited as being the identity of the person as such. And so Master Nagarjuna says, what else is a person? A person is designated on the basis of these 6 constituent factors. Even the 6 constituent factors are designated on their combination of their parts and so forth. And then he further goes on to say that a person is merely designated. The form or matter is designated, and the space in turn is designated, mere name. And then the name also does not have any independent existence. And therefore, what we can say is that things are designated, but we use labels to designate things, being this and that. Just as in the world, things are designated. And although the things are designated, what happens to us is we see that things have some, we perceive them to have some kind of independent, objective existence. And so, look at how things appear to you. When you look at me, for example, you say, oh, I see the Dalai Lama. And then when I look at you, I would say I see these people. But then how you appear to me and how I appear to you is as if there is some kind of independent objective existence, whereas that way of existence is not there. And therefore, the 7th Dalai Lama said, at the crossroad of these 6 perceptions, there is this hazy dualistic appearance, but do not hang on to that as being, as having some kind of objective, independent existence. Place your mind in the nature of emptiness. And so, thinking about emptiness, how things are dependently designated, you will be able to see that there is nothing which you can actually pinpoint as being oneself or other things. And as your understanding deepens and insight into emptiness deepens, you'll be able to see what Master Tsongkhapa says in the 3 principal aspects of the path. That without alternation, you'll be able to see that dependent means emptiness and emptiness means dependence. And therefore, even the name itself cannot be found. So we use the names to refer to things, the objects, whereas the name itself does not have any intrinsic or independent objective existence as well. And therefore, things are dependently designated while they are empty of any independent intrinsic existence, and therefore they are, as taught by the Buddha in the Heart Sutra, where he says form is emptiness, emptiness is form. And therefore meditate on emptiness by thinking that nothing whatever has any independent objective existence, even the name. In the Madhyamaka Avatara, when you search for things in the sevenfold, through the sevenfold reasoning, nothing can be found. So even in conventional terms, nothing can be found to have any independent existence, and therefore what you find is the ultimate nature of things, that is emptiness. So emptiness is established on certain object, and when the object itself on which emptiness is established cannot be found when you search for its identity, how can the emptiness also be found when you search for it? Om Sarva Yoga Chitta, please repeat. Om Upatayami. Om Sarva Yoga Chitta, Upatayami. Om Sarva Yoga Chitta, Upatayami. So with this, we are done with the all-encompassing yoga mind. So just as you, imagine this insight into emptiness transforming into Vajra, 5-spoke Vajra at your heart, and then imagine the same at the heart of the Guru also the white disk and the Vajra coming forth, the replicas of it coming forth and dissolving into you, thereby stabilizing these two principles of bodhicitta and the Vajra, and the wisdom of emptiness, symbolized by these two at your heart. So regarding this mantra, Om Swabhava, Om has 3 letters which represents our body, speech and mind. A, U and Ma represents our body, speech and mind. And on the basis of these 3, there is the designated self, merely designated self. So when you don't do any kind of a critical analysis into the nature of the person of course exists. Whereas when you search for it, for the identity of a person, apart from being designated, there's no person as such. And therefore, Om Swabhava Shuddha refers to that the person being devoid of any true existence, inherent existence. And then Sarva Dharma refers to all phenomena, also meaning the Shuddha, meaning pure, that the other phenomena also are devoid of any intrinsic existence. So when we recite the tantric sadhanas, we come across these 2 mantras, and we need to familiarize ourselves with the meaning of these 2 mantras, not just repeating the words. So when you do your prayers and come across these mantras, and without thinking about the meaning, then you actually tend to go somewhere else to meditate on emptiness. But if you think about the meaning of these mantras, you are going to be able to do the meditation on emptiness right there. So the mantra that you have just repeated after me means that you will make this practice of bodhicitta and the meditation on emptiness a daily practice, because when you don't do this, it's actually when you don't think about emptiness on a daily basis, when you are going against the tantric vows. So yourself, as well as your psychophysical aggregates, are empty of inherent existence. So from within this state of emptiness, you imagine yourself arising, visualize yourself arising into great compassionate deity. So it's not just done ordinarily, thinking, oh, I am Avalokiteśvara, just like that, but here, arising in the form of a deity has to be done from within the meditation on emptiness. So first, you dissolve your mind into emptiness yourself, completely into emptiness, and with the meditation on emptiness. And then that meditation on emptiness, the mind which meditates and is absorbed in emptiness, reflects in yourself into transforming into the deity, Lokeshvara. So instead of doing your meditation in this way, if you just think, while staying ordinary, if you just think, I am a deity, Avalokiteśvara, it will not help you to overcome your grasping at some true independent existence of yourself and things. So you arise into the deity, and then you are marked with the 3 letters or syllables: Om at your crown, A at your throat, and Hum at your heart. So Om on the crown is white, A red, and Hum is blue. Please, you're requesting the guardian deities at the door to open the curtains at the door and let you in. Please repeat this. My mind is in reality Avalokiteśvara. Namo Purushaya Ho. So with this, we are done with the entering into the mandala at the outside. And then next comes giving instruction on the secrecy of Tantra. As a Tantric practitioner, you should not disclose to people what kind of mantras you are reciting and so forth, what kind of deity yoga practice you are doing. Kunken Lama Jamyang Shepa once received a transmission, an oral reading transmission of, and was requested by someone to give the transmission of a mantra. And then Kunken Lama Jamyang Shepa said, ask the rest of the people in the room to go outside and ask the person who requested the transmission to stay. So then he gave the transmission of the mantra secretly to this person. So this is how the secrecy of Tantric is practiced by serious practitioners like Kunken Jamyang Shepa, who may give in Tantric initiations in public, but when he was asked to give a transmission of a mantra, he did like that. So of course we do many different deity yoga practices, sadhanas, but It's important to keep secret your main practice of Tantra when you are doing the practice yourself, and it's important to not disclose your secrecy and secret practice, and also the materials that you use for your practice also must be kept secret. So you're given this water to keep the secrecy of tantric practice. So please take the tea and think, imagining that you are taking this water to keep the pledge. His Holiness said the blessing for the tea, which is homage to Avalokiteśvara, with 1,000 arms representing the 1,000 Chakravartins, 1,000 eyes representing 1,000 Buddhas, and who appears according to the suitability of the disciples' mental dispositions. So when I was receiving this initiation, there were my two tutors also. And then at this point of time, we wore this hat. And of course, in the Tibetan tradition, we actually have these different hats of the different traditions. Whereas if you look at the Indian masters, like the Master Nagarjuna and so forth, they don't seem to have any hats. I don't know when it's wearing the hats by the religious practitioners like us actually started. I don't know if it was there in India during the times of Master Nagarjuna and the masters who were known as the 6 ornaments and 2 supreme masters. If there was some tradition of wearing a hat in India, it must be included in the monks' the articles that the monks are supposed to possess. So with regard to the shirt that our monks wear, it is said that it originated with Master Chandarakshita. When he was in Tibet, he felt cold at some point, and he was said to have taken his cushion on his shoulder, on his body, and to cover himself for warmth. So repeat this. So in order for the wisdom deities to descend upon you, straighten your back, hold your body straight, When I ring the bell, you need to push the lower air from the or the wind energy from the lower abdomen, lower part of your body up, and then the wind energy from the upper part of your body down, and thereby holding a vast breath. So Avalokiteśvara comes down. Innumerable Avalokiteśvaras from the 10 directions come down like the blizzard being blown by wind, and they dissolve into you. So Lokeshwara comes from the Padma mountain and the other pure realms of the Buddhas. This is stabilizing the blessing. So next comes checking what color appears to your eyes when you look suddenly up in the space. Different colors like white, red, yellow, green. Move the blindfold and look up in space. So the flower garland that you have been given, imagine it that you are offering it to the deity in the mandala, deities in the mandala, and make your prayer that it may fall on the deity with whom you have a special connection. I offer this precious flower in the mandala of Lokeshwara. May it fall upon the deity with whom I have special karmic connection. So let us imagine that the flower had fallen in the center of the mandala, and your secret name from that is Vajra Lokeshwara. And you are given Please remove the blindfold. So having removed the blindfold, now you are able to, as you see the statue of Vadisangpo, the Avalokiteśvara Vadisangpo, you imagine seeing the deity of the mandala. So imagine you are able to see the entire mandala together with its deities. Next, to give the initiation, having entered the mandala, please make a mandala offering. This ground anointed with perfume, strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents and sun and the moon. Imagine this is the Buddha filled and offer it up to you. Please ripen and liberate me by giving the initiation in the Lokeshwara Mandala, Lokeshwara, who is the embodiment of all the compassion of all the Buddhas. So the disciples should imagine themselves transforming into Akshobhya Lokeshwara from within the meditation on emptiness. So Akshobhya Lokeshwara, radiant and white, smiling, both eyes gazing on wandering beings, your hair tied up in a knot with strands hanging down, and your hands, the right is of the two hands, the right is in the gesture of bestowing supreme feats, while the left rests akimbo at your hip. You are adorned with all precious jewelry and draped in silken garments, and standing with the 2 feet placed together. So you are given this vast initiation, the water initiation. And then next is the initiation of crown. So you again dissolve into emptiness. From within the emptiness, you arise into Ratnasambhava, yellow in color. So imagine the initiation beings conferring the initiation upon you. Next is the Vajra initiation. So the disciples and the scepter transforms into dissolves into emptiness. From within that emptiness, it rises into Amitabha Lokeshwara. And Amitabha, in the hand of the Guru, dissolves into the scepter and into Vajra, and you are conferred this initiation of Vajra initiation. So next, this initiation comes on the basis of the bell, Amoga Siddhi, and we resolve into Amoga Siddhi and arise emptiness and rise into Amoga Siddhi. And next is the name initiation, given on the basis of Vajra and bell together. Sometimes they're not used. So this is connected with Vajrachana, Lokeshvara. So the deities, initiation deities, confer the initiation, the name initiation. So your secret name that you have received earlier, Vajralokeshvara, is uttered, and as soon as you hear this name being uttered, you experience great bliss. So having received these 5 initiations, they help to purify your 5 aggregates, and the negative emotions associated with the next is the Vajra Master initiation. For that you make mandala offering. Please repeat these lines of request. Chimi dobe lobungi. Wongu tamba dalatsu. Chimi dobe wongu. Chamugu tamba dalatsu. Chimi dobe lobungi. Wongu tamba tsedusu. Please bestow upon me this irreversible initiation of the Master. So the disciples appear in the form of the main Lokeshvara, the chief Lokeshvara of the deity, holding the Vajra bell and the mudra, which represents your body, speech, and mind, the pledges of body, speech, and mind. So the 5 earlier former initiations authorize you or empower you to do deity yoga practice, and this Vajra Master initiation gives you the power or empowers you to engage in teaching and giving teaching and transmissions. So in order to stabilize this, you are given a vast initiation. So having conferred initiation, the overflow of the surplus water transforms into the lineage deity on your crown, and then the initiation deities also dissolve into it, and so thereby you are stabilized with the blessings. So the five Buddha families are touched on to your different parts of the body: the crown, throat, heart, navel, and the sacred place. And then the four goddesses on the four doors, at the four doors, they are touched on your different parts of the body. So with this blessing of the deities that are touched on your different parts of the body, such as the shoulders and the knees, they empower you to do the inner practices of the deity yoga. Please repeat this. So please put on the blindfold. So next is what you have requested for is for the blessing or for the wisdom of Tumo, the inner fire, to arise in you. So you're given this blessed substance for the secret initiation. So the third initiation is the secret initiation. The third initiation is the secret initiation, and then the third is the wisdom initiation. So they clear any obstacles to use our channels, energies within the channels, and so forth, so that you don't encounter obstacles when you do your practice in the future. And so, by using the wind energy and the vital fluids in your body, they help to overcome these coarser layers of mind, so that you are able to use the innermost subtle mind of clear light in your practice. And so these initiations empower you to to clear the obstacles to your practice for that. Please repeat these. Sheravi shite chenki. Wangor tambatse. Wangor tambatse. Wangor tambatse to su. So in the Dzogchen system, while your mind is agitated by these negative emotions, because the states of mind are permeated by the primordial pristine awareness nature of the mind. Therefore, there is a unique practice in the Dzogchen tradition to without using the inner fluids and wind energies and so forth, using this awareness, insight into this awareness, pristine awareness nature of the mind to master your mind, so that the negative emotions are overpowered. So when your experience grows in this awareness of the pristine nature of the Hrīḥ more and more, then you are able to overcome or overpower the negative emotions, and you'll be able to sustain it and remain in that awareness or insight into the pristine awareness nature of the mind. So this is the direct introduction to this luminous nature of the awareness, pristine awareness in the Dzogchen tradition. If you have the standard or qualified master doing this introduction to a qualified disciple, then this really happens. So, in Tantric Deity Yoga practice, of course, in order to reach that goal of being able to make this clear light mind manifest in you, so that it is transformed into the path, you use concerts. And these concerts are not to produce children as such, but so that you are able to generate this bliss, which gives rise or induces this wisdom, the clear light mind. So imagine a concert emerging from your heart, you yourself having visualized yourself as Akshobhya Lokeshvara. So your mind is Dharmakaya, your body, the deity, and then the energies as the wind energy as the mantra. So the wind energy moves from the lower end of the central channel, and which ignites the fire at the navel, that tumo, and the inner fire, and then that fire, the heat goes up to the crown, thereby melting the bodhicitta at the crown chakra, which melts and drips down or moves down, flows down from the crown to the throat, throat to the heart, heart to the navel, and navel to the sacred place. Thereby you imagine or experience the four blissful experiences. And at the fourth spontaneous illusion bliss, you meditate, you imagine being absorbed, staying absorbed in meditation on emptiness. In the Sakya tradition, it is said that from the tip of the lower end of the central channel, this moves up to the sacred place, the sacred chakra, and then from there to the navel, up to the heart, throat chakras, and then up to the crown chakra. So with this, so this leaves imprint for the path level of the clear light, basic clear light mind. So in according to the Guhyasamaja Tantra, the third initiation is for this manifesting the clear light nature of the mind itself within you. Of the fourth stage. And then after that you arise into the illusory body, and then there is the union of the illusory body and the clear light, and which is the level of the trainee level of union. So the union of the realization is the main union at the trainee level, which is also called the realization union of realization. So, of course, the basic clear light mind itself is not tainted in its nature, basic nature. But because of some taint that is left on the mind, one is not able to overcome the three visions of appearance, increase, and near attainment. Once they are gone, then the negative emotions will not arise. And still there is the some stains left from the mind. And once you overcome even those residual stains that are left on the mind, completely, when they are eliminated, then you reach the state where you are completely absorbed in meditation, while being able to see the varieties, diversities of things, just the Buddha level of Buddhahood. Please repeat. So hold your body in the 7 postures of Vairochana. Straighten your spine and breathe naturally. So here what is being introduced is this clear light or luminous nature of the mind. So if you are able to make this clear light or luminous nature of the mind active to perceive objects, then you will be able to attain Mahamudra or the rainbow body and so forth. So it goes through the 4 joys or ecstasies that you experience through the normal dissolution or the flow of the energy, the fluid from the crown down to the secret place and up, back up again to the secret, to the crown. And next, having given this initiation, next the Vajra Master transforms into the king Songtsen Gampo as it appeared, happened in the pure vision of the 5th Dalai Lama, where Songtsen Gampo appeared. So from the heart of the Guru appears Songtsen Gampo. The Guru in the form of the chief deity. So all the samsara and nirvana, the phenomena in samsara and nirvana arise from this clear light mind. Because things are empty, therefore, dependent origination is feasible, and therefore things arise in dependence on. It's feasible to say that things arise from dependence on other factors. So in the highest Yoga Tantra, the primordial purity, or the nature of the mind, and then whose essence is empty, and then whose expression is compassion. So in the text there is the use of the term alaya. It's not the same alaya as it is understood by the Chatamatras. So when introducing the inseparability of samsara and nirvana, or the clarity in emptiness as being inseparable, it is in the Sakya tradition. It is given, explained on the basis of the alaya as well. So alaya here also is not the same as the Chittamatra alaya.
Other thing, down the and subject as a London
So in the Sarma tradition, there is the introduction to the union state of that one attains, and within this union state, so the union state precisely refers to the union of body and mind, the illusory body and the clear light mind. So according to the Samacha Tantra, so this is the same here. So within the body, speech and mind, there are degrees of subtlety, the gross, subtle, and the subtlemost, the subtlest body, speech and mind. So when you come to the subtlest mind and body, they are inseparable from each other. So you attain, it says you attain this Jnana Vajra state of, please repeat. Pay heed to everything that you, Chief Master, So with this, we are done with the Lokeshvara, Avalokiteśvara, Avalokiteśvara initiation. Please make a short mandala offering for the next blessing of the four-armed Chandrasik. Avalokiteśvara. Mandala kamniyatayami. So you have imagined me as the Avalokiteśvara with one face and two hands. Now imagine me transforming into a four-armed Chandrasik with one face. So essentially, of course, the Avalokiteshvaras are in essence the same, but different aspects of Avalokiteshvara appears. Please repeat these request lines. Loving Master, please. So we have requested for the mantra or Vidya mantra of Avalokiteśvara. So we'll first do the 7-limb practice. I dedicate all my practices of doing prostration, making offerings, confessing my negativities, and requesting the Buddhas not to pass away and turn the wheel of Dharma for enlightenment. So the Buddha is considered as the teacher of refuge, and the actual refuge is, the real refuge is the Dharma, and then the Sangha are those who assist us on the path. So the Buddhas are our teachers, not like someone who washes away our sins or unwholesome actions and then who removes our suffering with his hands, nor do they shift their own realization into us. So the Buddha cannot do this for us, but how do the Buddha help us? By teaching the truth. They lead us to liberation. So the Dharma, by teaching the Dharma, which is his teaching, and in reality the Dharma refers to the true path and true cessation. So suchness, by showing reality or truth, means, teaching us the reality or truth means that it is emptiness. So reaching the insight or developing the insight into emptiness has to be a gradual process for us by going through the meditation on impermanence and then into the more coarser understanding of selflessness, and finally we come to the real insight into emptiness. So the Buddha is a teacher for us, someone who has gone through the path and realized the path within himself and culminated the ultimate path within himself, and then he gives teachings to us, and then the followers practice his teaching and become and then realize the Dharma within themselves, which means developing the true path and true cessation within themselves, whereby the person becomes a Sangha member, and so an assistant on the path. So the true Dharma is the real or actual refuge for us. So we take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha in this way, and with this understanding. And then you say, through the practices of generosity and so forth that I've done, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So whatever virtuous practice you do, you should not dedicate them for some satisfaction and happiness of this life, nor for some higher fulfillment of a higher rebirth in the next life, but for the benefit of being able to serve all sentient beings, and leading all sentient beings to the state of Buddhahood. And for that, one aspires to become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. And therefore, when you say this verse, which says, to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Community, I take refuge until enlightenment is attained. And through the practice of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. So Buddhahood is the aim, and which must come through the combined practice of method and wisdom. And wisdom here, if you ask me, where is that wisdom mentioned in this line, I would say that when you come across the word I, may I take refuge, and then you say, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. You come across this word, and you could actually think about what is this nature of the I, or the self. And so, the one who takes refuge in the three jewels, is merely designated. There's no I or no self which is independently existing, and nor the Buddhahood that you aspire to does have any intrinsic existence. And when you think, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings, through the practices of generosity and so forth that I have done, you should contemplate what that I is, and you should find that it is very devoid of any true existence. So repeat this, recite this. Through the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Community, I take refuge until I'm enlightened. Through the practice of generosity and so forth that I have done, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And next, we'll do the so we'll say this one verse that we used earlier for Bodhisattva vows. When I received Lamde teachings from Chöpje Tijin Rinpoche, I recited these prayers together with him. So let's all say these verses together. I take refuge in the three jewels. I confess individually all my negativities. I rejoice in the merits of all beings. I take to heart with the state of Buddhahood. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and Supreme Sangha. And I do so to attain enlightened mind in order to fulfill the aims of myself and myself and others. I shall develop the supreme enlightened motive, and towards all sentient beings, my invited guests, I shall act with supreme enlightened conduct. May I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. So this is said 3 times. So I was explaining this mantra earlier, which shows the meditation on selflessness of persons as well as the objects or the basis of designation of a person, his or her psychophysical aggregates, that they are empty. And then Shunyata Jnana, Shunyata means emptiness, and Jnana is the wisdom, realizing that emptiness, and Svabhava Vajra refers to them being, these two being indivisible from each other. So the mind, meditating on emptiness, is completely absorbed in that meditation on emptiness. So from within that state of emptiness, you should meditate on emptiness. At your heart, from an R syllable arises a Hrīḥ syllable. That dissolves into, this transforms into some kind of a ray, heap of rays, light, and which becomes brighter and brighter, and then it dissolves, and then you transform into, this transforms into Avalokiteśvara at your heart. At your heart, you imagine four-armed Shenrezik. At his heart is Hrīḥ, syllable Hrīḥ, on a moon disk. And in the altar also, under one of the canopies, is four-armed Shenrezik. So imagine a real four-armed Shenrezik, Avalokiteśvara. So historically also we can think about Avalokiteśvara having a very special connection with us Tibetans. And in history, it is said, historical accounts, it is mentioned that the emperors of China were Manjushri emanations. Although India is not associated particularly with any of these deities, Manjushri or anything, but most of the Buddhist scholars have come from India. So, for example, with regard to epistemology and logic, which are taught by Dignaga Dharmakirti and so forth, they really help us to sharpen our mind and to give us a quick thinking. And so whenever you hear about something, you immediately think why, how, and not just believe them. I sometimes tend to boast with people that although I'm 82 years old, my mind is still bright, clear and sharp. And the reason why this is so is because of having studied quite a bit the Indian masters' texts on logic and epistemology. So whenever you actually study in the scriptures and so forth, immediately tend to think why so-and-so, how so-and-so, and so forth. So when I was visiting Tawang, on the way to Tawang, I was in Guwahati, and then for some days I became friends associated with one Indian politician. And I told him that I usually, my mind is quite clear, and because of sleeping 9 hours and also using lots of using it a lot. And because of these, it helps me to have clarity of mind, and I can deceive others easily. And so this man said he cannot do that because he sleeps only 6 hours. So the subjects like logic and epistemology that I've studied, using reason to prove things, as well as learning about the different systems of the system of mind itself, psychology and so forth, I have this clarity. The scientists, what they do is they don't draw conclusions right away. Because someone has found something, they don't believe that right away, but other scientists would also do cross-check. And then when everyone come to a consensus, then they say this is it. So similarly, we have the usage of logic and so forth in proving things. So regarding logic, in this hall we can say there's no elephant, because if the elephant existed in this hall, it should be perceptible to our senses, to our sight, whereas it is not. And then with regard to Mount Meru, we can also use the same logic. If it exists, then it should be perceptible to our sight, whereas it does not, we are not able to see it. And whereas we say the shadow of the Mount Meru is actually falls on us. When the sun is in the south, it's said that in the north there is shadow, it's night, because the shadow of the Mount Meru falls on there. But if the shadow falls on us, then how come we are not able to see the Mount Meru itself? So the reason why I deny the existence of Mount Meru is because we say that if someone cannot be held authoritative and reliable when they go against reason, how come we can go against some empirical experience and still hold on to this kind of belief? And Chandrakirti, so since the Buddha has said that he must not, that his followers must not believe him right away and whatever he says, but they must check his teaching and then accept them, not out of devotion to him. So similar in this spirit, therefore, the Nalanda masters like Nagarjuna and particularly Chandrakirti, Master Chandrakirti has actually said that when he has enumerated 10 different sutras being provisional teachings of the Buddha, and cannot be taken literally. So rays of light are emitted from the heart of the Guru and invokes the deity in the altar, and it invokes the deity's heart, and therefore the mantra of Avalokiteśvara, Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, comes from the deity in the mandala and comes out of his mouth, and they come to the disciples, goes into their mouth, down through their thought, and are placed at your heart, so that you have received the blessings for disciplining and controlling your mind through the practice of love, compassion, and which gives rise to bodhicitta, and also the wisdom of emptiness, and thereby your virtues and wholesome practices and actions increase ever further, and thereby you actually send out light to the rest of the world, and thereby bring peace. And please repeat. Please recite the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra, one round of mala. Om Mani Padme Hum, 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 Om Mani So that's all. So I have served as the sponsor for this initiation, and then the CTA also has taken the we decided to sponsor it, and I've met many Chinese from mainland China who ask me to not forget them, and whenever I meet these Chinese people, they usually cry, have tears in their eyes, and so I have intended to help everyone with this initiation of the 9-deity Avalokiteśvara from the visionary teachings of the 5th Dalai Lama. When I was receiving these visionary teachings and the initiations of the 5th Dalai Lama's visionary cycle of teachings from Tana Rinpoche in my childhood, each night when I was receiving this initiation, I had some indication of something special. One night, I had a dream where I saw the Thangka painting of the 5th Dalai Lama, and from the Thangka painting, the 5th Dalai Lama emerged, and he brought a very long yellow katak and put it around me. Perhaps it is the 5 or 4 arm span length. So when the 5th Dalai Lama was brought to Drepung Monastery after being recognized, and it was said that the 5th Dalai Lama, in his autobiography, it is mentioned that he was quite fond of Chang in his childhood before receiving his monastic vows. So regarding me, I really didn't have much good habit of for drinking Chang or alcohol. So of course, I must have some connection with the 5th Dalai Lama, because at this very difficult juncture of our history of Tibet, I am leading the Tibetan people. Therefore, this Avalokiteśvara initiation and the blessing of the Jenang blessing of the four-armed Chendrasik, I feel very fortunate to have been able to do this. And then this initiation and the blessing have also been webcast. They were asking me earlier whether those people who would receive this initiation on the net, receiving it on the net, would actually receive it. I said yes. And then those people who actually came for the Kalachakra initiation and were not able to stay for the initiation in Bodh Gaya, they also asked me whether they would receive the initiation if they received it on the net, and I said yes. On the day of the initiations, you should actually turn your mind towards me on that time, and then keep your faith and your spiritual bond. So in the case of the monastic ordination also, the Buddha was actually said to have ordained people through letters and by sending message to intend to receive the monastic ordination while the Buddha was giving it in some other place. Those who were not able to be at the same place could actually receive the ordination from afar. And so I said, therefore, that those people taking the initiation on the net would also receive the initiation. So my job is done to give the initiation. Now, you who are going to recite the Om Mani Padme Hum mantra for 600 million times should really do it well. So when you, in the end, when you take the pills, the blessed pills of the Mani Rilbu, you should be able to think along the line of receiving the blessings of Avalokiteśvara so that you'll be able to develop bodhicitta and the principles, and that you will be able to reach Buddhahood in the end.
Member to la new This is the prayer of words of truth. Nacho la le bunge zeme do nyengwe jombe chadan chi mengun yodo chebe toche. The homage to the three jewels, master of the glory of an ocean of boundless qualities, who look upon all helpless beings as if they were an only child. Sugatas of the past, present, and future, bodhisattvas, and those in training, hear these truthful lamentations of mine, I pray. May the complete teaching of the Buddha dispel the miseries of the existence and quiescence, spread as the glory of benefit and happiness for the whole world, and may the learned and accomplished holders of these teachings cause the activity of the 10 dharmic actions to increase, especially for the practitioners of the land of snows, mercilessly conquered by the uncivilized forces of evil. May the flowing stream of their blood and tears be swiftly halted by the powerful might of compassion. Those who are driven mad by the demon of negative emotions and pitifully bring ruin upon themselves and others through their reckless actions, much may such impudent beings gain the vision of what to adopt and abandon and meet with the kind and loving friends. In short, may all the vast praise of aspirations the Lord of Avalokiteśvara made for the land of Tibet in the presence of the Buddhas and their Bodhisattva heirs, and heirs swiftly come to their positive fruition here and now through the interdependence and profound intrinsic nature of appearance and emptiness, through the power of compassionate three jewels, by the force of these words of truth and through the strength of the infallible truth of cause and effect. May this our prayer of truth be swiftly accomplished without any hindrance. 아. 니 말에 큰알 때 동라서 니랑 동문다. 그럼 니면다. 니 동래. 동래 그냥. 지금 요 대한 얘기지.